Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. I'm Beatriz Mourad, and today I'm joined by Alex Bonilla.
Hola.
April Collins.
Hello.
And John McKenna.
Hi, everybody.
Today we will be discussing the Lego Movie 2, the second part, which was released last week. For those of you who have not seen the movie, we will be starting off the podcast with a brief non-spoiler discussion so you can listen in. After that, we will be diving into spoilers, but don't worry, I will warn you before we get there. It's been out for a while. I think it's still in theaters. It usually takes like about a month for it to get kicked out. So if you still haven't watched it and you're in the fence, don't worry, we will try and convince you one way or the other. You can find out more about this podcast at overlyanimated.com. You can subscribe to us on iTunes at overlyanimated.com/iTunes or on YouTube at youtube.com/overlyanimated, where we recently passed 1,000 subscribers. Woo!
Yay.
That's like awesome. Gotta get that YouTube money. If question marks, very...
All your YouTube millions belong to us now.
Possibly. We don't know.
Except we have to split it amongst like 15 of us. It's fine.
Yes, it's fine. It's fine. But yeah. So yeah, guys, tell me, right now we're just sticking with non-spoilers. Give me just your general impressions of the Lego Movie 2. Let's start with April.
So I'm always very weary of like sequels in any type of fashion, simply because I grew up with all of those Disney movies and all of those horrendous sequels. So
hey, The Lion King 2 was great.
We'll talk about that another time. But I always try to go in with an open mind, and I'm really glad that I did. I enjoyed this movie a whole lot more than I thought I was going to. It's really fun. It's it's fun and catchy, and I liked the sort of message behind it, which of course we'll get into. It's a great movie for anyone who played with Legos and who played with Legos with siblings specifically, which I did. So it really touched me and made me miss my brothers, and I called them afterwards. So I know. I enjoyed the music of this movie. I don't remember the first one being super duper like musical, but even though it took me by surprise, I liked it. So I'm pretty, I guess high on this movie. It was a good experience. I'm really glad that I went and saw it and got to, I guess, just enjoy it.
Awesome. I'm glad you enjoyed it so much. Alex, what do you think? Did you like it?
Well, I was raised in an era where sequels are now good. I was raised in the era of Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3, for example. I'm trying to
What about Cars 2?
Yeah, okay, there's still bad ones. But I'm just saying, I'm of the mind that sequels are not a lost cause anymore in our age. There have been enough good ones that we don't have to go in with these low expectations. So, but on the other hand, I was in the minority that the first Lego Movie to me was not that impressive. I was very underwhelmed, especially given the general consensus that it was like one of the best movies of that year. So I with that in mind, I went into Lego Movie 2 like, okay, well, it'll be somewhere in the middle between that and the Lego Batman movie, which I did enjoy. And I think it ends up around there where like there's a lot of pieces, avoiding Lego puns, but there are a lot of pieces in this movie that I feel like in a vacuum, when I think about them, they're good. It's dealing with a lot more different messages than the first Lego movie, which I feel was a little more straightforward. I think this one is trying to tackle a couple of different things. So in that sense, it's more interesting to watch. But just as a whole product, I didn't leave the theater as excited as I think I should have, given the general tone of the entire movie. But like, there are parts I really love. There are parts that I'm like, okay, sure. And there's not really a part I hate. So that's why I kind of feel weird in not being excited for the movie. But at the same time, I do think that it's a functional sequel, and I think it is better than the first Lego Movie. So I'm just kind of in a weird limbo with this. But there are definitely parts that I'm hyped, that I do want to talk about definitely in the movie.
Okay. And John, what about you? Did you like it?
I just remember that when the first Lego Movie came out, my main reaction was just my eyes rolled back in my head, because when I saw the phrase Lego Movie, it was, this is going to be just a stupid, shameless cash grab made for 4-year-olds. And then I actually saw the movie, and I realized that this movie was way better than it had any right to be called the Lego Movie. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was extremely creative. I loved how they really committed to how every animation was Lego. There was very little deviation whatsoever aside from the faces, and them jumping into the real world with obsessive Will Ferrell dad playing with his Lego set. It was like, I really enjoyed it quite a lot. I could see why the hype hippos were going off saying why it should have been Best Animated Picture at the Oscars, even though it was snubbed. So then when Lego Movie 2 came out, I was like, okay, this was fine. You know, the hype hippos are getting all excited, think it's going to be great. I did see it, and I have to admit, I like the first one better, though this one was okay, but I felt like it kind of went over some of the same ground that the first Lego Movie did. I thought that the scenes with the people were better, but overall, it was a fine movie. It's certainly a decent movie. There's nothing decent movie. It's a fun thing to go to by yourself. You know, go see with friends. The Lego designs are still cool. The voice acting is still very nice. But I didn't like it as much as the first movie. But all in all, it was fine. It's good. I don't think they're gonna start jumping up and down for it to get nominated for something at the Oscars next year. But you know, it's a fun time that can be had.
Gotcha. Well, I kind of fall. I don't know if I'm the most negative or if I'm like at the same level as John. Because I think the first one is just is a much more superior film than this one. I think this one's a little bit of scatterbrained. It is less focused, but it also the things that I don't know. I have questions about the world and the rules of this world that they've created, and we'll get into them more later. It's funny how
in general, I think that if you think too hard about the mechanics of how the story works,
I know, but
then it falls apart.
I'm just saying, like for instance, I'm just saying the world of Toy Story it makes sense, you know. It's like there are these clear, defined rules that were established, and it's like, okay, well, this is the reality that is there presented to us. Where in this one, I'm like, what's going on? And then when I was like refreshing my mind because I saw this like a week or so ago, I was reading the plot summary on Wikipedia just to remind myself, and they said metaphorically in this world, and I'm just like, what are you talking about? Why are you using this term? So there are elements of this movie that I really enjoyed and I wished I had seen more of. There were other things that I kind of was a little bored by. There were just certain things that they kind of went through. They just basically said things that have already been explored in other ways in a much more interesting fashion and just were kind of superficially explored here, that I was just like, all right, sure, this is good, but it's not, you're not bringing anything new to the table, which is sad because that's what the first one did do, something a little bit more different. It did take a couple more risks. But so yeah, I have my qualms with the film, but we'll get into them more. But I do want to ask this kind of somewhat philosophical question. Did we need a sequel to the Lego Movie? Like, was it mandatory? And I will say to John saying that you thought it was going to be a cash grab. I mean, technically the Lego Movie was a cash grab because the profits for Legos like soared after the movie. So it was still a commercial for Legos, but it was just a very well-made commercial.
But the thing is, when I said that, I mean, it's sort of like you threw it out there because people would go to it just because it said Lego. What I didn't expect was it to actually be a movie with heart, feeling, good writing, and people who actually were committed to making this giant Lego world and just how good it was. So that's sort of what I was getting at, though.
A good commercial.
Yeah, it's a
good commercial.
But again,
just to the question of do we need a sequel? My take always with this is, does any movie need a sequel? Maybe not. But if you think that you have extra ideas that you can develop in the universe that you've established, then I think that there is merit to continuing in that universe and exploring these new ideas. And I do think that the Lego Movie 2, I get what you're saying, that like some of the stuff is treading very close to what the first movie did, but I also think it's trying to incorporate other themes into it that maybe I didn't expect it to, or to get. I didn't expect them to try dealing with this many different things, and that results in it feeling a little bit scattered at times and unfocused. But at the same time, if you have those ideas at all and you think you have a way to make them into an exciting movie still, I think there's merit to that. So I am totally fine with the existence of a Lego Movie sequel, especially considering that I feel it is different enough from the first movie to differentiate itself.
But I think one of the other things we have to point out, though, is that this is the fourth movie that incorporates Lego as well. So,
well, I mean, that's an unfair thing, though, because those other two, like the Lego Batman and Lego Ninjago, they're actually telling like a story within that. Like, it's not a direct continuation of the Lego Movie. So that's why it's kind of like, yeah, they're included in the Lego universe, sure. But like, for instance, the Lego Ninjago movie had nothing really to do with the Lego Movie.
No, I mean, I get that, but so I'm thinking in terms of like,
yeah,
I'm thinking like, yeah, I know. I'm just sort of thinking like style, like sort of like, you know, the style and the style, the angles and all that. It's like now it's sort of, we've seen this now 3 times. It's sort of like, you know, how, yes, Last Jedi is a sequel to Force Awakens, but in between we had Rogue One, and we're going to have all these other movies as well. So it's like it's a sequel, but it's a sequel, and we've already had stuff in that universe as well. So.
Yeah, well, again, Ninjago I don't think is within that universe, though, is what I'm saying. It's not something that took place in the home of Will Ferrell's family, is what I'm saying.
Right, but
so that's why I'm like, yeah, but it's like the only thing that links it is that it's Legos. It's not that it's like the same universe, unlike say Rogue One or say Solo, which are still interconnected with these characters we're very familiar with from that world. So it's a little different.
Right.
But April, tell me. Are you're happy that we got this movie?
I mean, I guess it's hard to say like it, and to go along with what Alex said is that do we ever really need a sequel to any movie? And so I like whenever a sequel can come about and it can be done very well. Like they could have just totally made the cash grab out of this and, you know, did it like, you know, cut the budget for things in an effort to, of course, you know, raise their revenue and all of that. But there was a lot of like scenes and moments in this movie that I was like, oh, well, you really didn't spare any like expense with this movie. So I appreciate that you could give enough of like your heart and of course your budget to make this movie or, you know, to give it your all versus like, and I think that's my biggest issue when it comes to some sequels is that then studios will cut things and like the animation isn't as good. They'll replace a lot of the actors for, you know, cheaper unknown names and that kind of situation. And so with this one, they kept all of the same cast. They even added a lot of like big ticket people. And then like, it was nice having, you know, a lot of like big names and they probably just were just like, oh, I'll just do a cameo or whatever. But even still, like for them to kind of have that and make that effort, it speaks a lot to just them. But I mean, to answer your question, no, we don't ever need a sequel to anything. But this one was enjoyable and it could have been a lot worse. Mm-hmm. So, and I, you know, I agree that there are, you know, issues with like the plot and the story and things like that. But sometimes like, and this is why the other reason why like I try to go into like movies with open minds, especially like animated movies, is because a lot of the times it's not geared towards me. And so I try and get into that like 5-year-old April perspective or that 8-year-old April perspective or whatever age it's supposed to be in and appreciate the movie from that stance. And so I feel like, you know, let's see, when I was playing with Legos, I was maybe like 10 or 11. And so, yeah, like 10 or 11-year-old April would love this movie and all of that, or, you know, and could really relate to it. And so that's kind of what like I try and go into especially whenever we go into a movie that's targeted towards a younger audience. You know, no, we don't ever need a sequel for anything, but whenever we do get a sequel, it's nice whenever it's really well done.
Right,
right. I have to confess, I never actually played with Legos growing up, or I don't remember playing with Legos growing up.
Yeah, I mean, I did, but that wasn't my big thing.
My brother was the real Lego fan, and I would always be annoyed when he invited me to play with him. So these movies have made me reconsider that attitude and make me feel bad about my past self, but also recognize that we were all kids and we have bad tendencies we need to grow out of. And just speaking to April's thing, I just want to point out, like you mentioned that you get in like the young mindset, but I do think a good part of this movie is that there are more adult themes being touched upon that I think that even as an adult I appreciated being included in this movie, even if kids maybe aren't as in tune with it. But I do think that there is something to be taken out of even for more mature viewers.
Right.
And in the first movie, Will Ferrell had a giant Lego set he was making too, so it's clearly, and so there's definitely enough for like adults too. Adults play with Legos.
Yeah,
Damn.
I play with Legos, so fight me.
No one will fight you. No one will fight you. But yeah, okay. So this is the part where we go into spoilers. We've already given your thoughts of the movie. You decide if you want to keep listening or not. Last warning, spoilers. 3,
You've
2,
been warned.
You've been warned. Okay, cool. So the movie's basically split up into like 3 parts, right? So it's the human story. It's the story with in the world of like the sister, star system. Yes. And then you have Emmett and Rex having their own adventure. So I kind of wanted to start with the part that worked the least for me, which is the human part of this. My biggest thing when watching it was that I just feel like they didn't balance this kind of interchanging between the human world and the Lego world. I mean, the thing is, the whole point of the first one was that was a surprise. It's like, oh, they're actually human, and then they're actually playing with these things. And I just felt like there was just this weird, like in this time, it was just a lot more interwoven within the story. It wasn't so much like, oh, this is only going to happen in the third act. It was much more played into. But at the same time, I just thought it just didn't make sense. I was like, okay, so is this the kid's imagination? How does this work? Wait, why is this being incorporated? Or wait, are you actually alive, these Legos, or are they not? Is this all in the mind of the kids? And then what's going on? How does this work? For me, just didn't work as smoothly as the previous one. And that to me was just, I don't know, it just, in a way, it took me out of the movie because it just kind of forced me to be like, wait, but what's going on here? Like, why are you all whatever? So I don't know. I like the premise of like, okay, it's siblings fighting with toys and fighting over the toys and not like the brother wanting to not have his space being infiltrated by the sister. Like, I get that and I find that fascinating. I just don't think this element of the film worked as well. But am I alone here in this?
Well, I think something interesting to point out about like how there was a more interwoven human world and like Lego world is that at the very beginning of the movie, they essentially spell out like up to a certain point, all of this is like the kids' imagination because the boy who's playing with the Legos, I can't remember his name right now. Finn, that's what it is. I was like, I feel like it's Adventure Timey.
Yeah, well, he is Finn the human.
Finn the human. Oh man. But so Finn even says like in the like fight with his sister or whatever, he's like, no, like there's gonna be time travel and like future identities, and I was like, okay. And so I think like it kind of I think like once I heard that, I was just like, okay, like I have an understanding of how this movie is going to go, but it was still like a really fun journey. And I liked that like we're going between the different systems between like, what was it? Armageddon? It wasn't Armageddon. It was
Apocalypseburg.
No, Apocalypseburg. So there's like Apocalypseburg, and then there's like the Sistar system. And so, and like I like the whole like we're trying to travel between the two of them. And I get where it like super disconnects, but that's also something you have to keep in mind is that essentially like in the first one, this is all like their imagination and them playing with toys. And so like it's just them like sort of making it up as they go along. Like I remember all the time like starting a story or playing something with my brothers and not knowing how it was going to end until it ended or until we started getting into a fight, which was usually when it ended. But So I like that sort of element, that it kind of feels very like disconnected and jarring, and a little bit jarring. And as an adult, like, but again, like, I watched this through the eyes of a kid because I am a giant kid, even after all of these years. And so I'm like, this is fun. This is an adventure, and I'm just here for the ride kind of situation. And it, like, it's interesting to see like where a kid's imagination goes and how it takes them there. The only part, of course, that wouldn't necessarily be like inside, I guess, like, it's them sort of going back and explaining it to themselves, would be like the parts where like it seems like the Legos are alive and they're like fighting underneath the dryer or something like that. Like, I imagine that's like Finn going back and being like, no, they're fighting under the dryer, that's why they're both there, kind of situation. Or even they may not actually be under the dryer, he's just like, that's what they're doing right now, kind of situation. Or even like as I was a kid, I would just put things under the dryer and be like, they're fighting under there, like plus, you can't get under there, to my brothers, of course. So it, like, looking at it that way, like, all of like the sort of jarring, like the jarred edges between the worlds makes sense to me. But again, I don't know. That's just my take on it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I will say, like, the mechanic of having the human world appear in the third act of the first movie, I think that's a situation where it's just a genie you can't put back in the bottle. So, like, interweaving it in the sequel is kind of the only direction I see that you can really take it, because then you're if you're without it, then you're kind of just diving even deeper into retreading the first movie. Whereas here, I think that if you're interweaving it, it allows the story to have like two different readings at the same time, because on the one hand, you can stick yourself in the Lego interpretation of the story, which is actually just the boy's interpretation of what he's telling. Basically. But then you also have the second level of these two sides representing the brother and the sister and their struggle to communicate with each other, and the sister like not knowing how to get his brother to play with him. So like I like the idea of a story that works in two different ways at the same time, sort of thing, with this dynamic. And I do think that it's a Toy Story situation where you kind of just have to accept that the Legos are part of the imagination here. Like if you dive too deep into like, wait, but why are they under the dryer? Why are they like walking with each other? Like, I think that distracts you from what the story stuff that's going on in the movie. And on the grand scale of things, I don't think it's that big of a deal, considering the what we've set up in the first movie. But like, I enjoyed the dynamic, and I think that it actually works wonders for the story.
I mean, just before we go to you, I just want to clarify, like, I don't have a problem with like the sibling dynamic stuff. I love that stuff.
No, but you love like switching between Legos and humans.
For me, it's more, and I agree with you. The whole interweaving, that is the only way to do it. For me, I just thought it was it wasn't done well. I just think it was done sloppily. I think, and also I disagree. This isn't like Toy Story. In Toy Story, that world, the toys are alive. That is the rule of Toy Story. The toys are alive, and then they hide when when humans are around. But that's the thing. It's like, okay, so then I don't need an explanation for why in Toy Story, why they end up on the floor or something, because it just means, okay, well, when the humans were gone, they went there. For me, it's more of, okay, well, if it's the case that the boy left them under the dryer, I want a scene where he throws them under the dryer. You know what I mean? Or they accidentally kicked them under the dryer, and that's how they ended up there. Instead of suggesting that they do have this kind of ability to go away from, have this agency, I guess, to be able to move outside of the realm of the imagination of the
I think that
kids.
if they had actually showed scenes of him putting them under the dryer or something along those, like, we do get the scenes where he's like Finn or the sister Bianca are sort of moving the actual pieces around in line of the story. But I think that if we had done things like, okay, I'm actually going to put this under the dryer or something along those lines, I feel like that would have taken you out of the story too much. And it's a really fine line to cross whenever you're going to sort of pull anyone out of like the imaginatory area of existence within the story to go address like the real world like aspect of it. But if you had because it's one of those, like, it's a can of worms. Like, you can't just have one scene where he's just putting one Lego under the dryer. Like, you would have to have many scenes of them doing all of the things. And then at that point, you're just watching two kids play with toys. And that's not what the movie is trying to be.
But it is what the movie's trying to be, is show, like, an imaginated and hyped up version of two kids playing with toys.
Right.
While
but
keeping
it's an
you in the imaginary world as much as possible.
I'm just saying, though. Like,
that's just saying, like, you might as well just set up, like, a webcam in a kid's playroom and then watch that, because that's not entertaining.
I'm just saying also, but I'm just saying, do you say that there can't be? But I think that there could be a way to do it. I think that there is possible a way where, say, when they cut to the kids playing, it doesn't have to be that quick. And the thing is, you say that it could be jarring to take you out, but that's what they're doing, is by definition of interweaving the human world with the Lego world, they are already taking us out and making it jarring. Right. So for me, it's like, it's kind of this thing where they're trying to do both, and it's like it doesn't work, because they aren't. If you're gonna do both, then you have to do it smoothly. And there are moments where they're expecting way too much of me to connect the dots. Is my problem, where I'm like, look, if you want to do it, fine. You're already taking us out. So why not actually do it properly? Is my thing.
Yeah, because I think it does work.
I mean,
John, come in. You talk.
Okay. Basically, I do agree. I feel like it could have been done a little bit better, though. I do like the fact they did sort of switch a little bit more back and forth. They did kind of buy into that a little bit, which for me, it kind of makes sense, because you have the Lego world playing out as the brother-sister battle, and then you have what's going on the human side as well. What threw it for me was that where I put the first movie above the second movie in this context is that while the first movie, they had like little hints that it was sort of the human world playing out in the Lego world, because when, Lord Business's ship took off, you just saw this little block come off and just go, and I was like, okay, that's funny. And then it switches back. You could see, like, okay, I can imagine, like, there'd be this little kid going, like, making the little airplane noises. Here, where it threw me was that even though the toys were underneath the dryer, they were still alive. They were still acting. This gets to what you said, Beatrice, with the rules thing. And it's like, I sort of like the idea that this is shot as, it's what's going on in the player's mind on this Lego world, and we're seeing that. That I kind of dig. I like that sort of idea that we zoom out and we see what it actually is, because that's part of the Lego experience. It's you're imagining a new world that you're building and rebuilding and constantly constructing out of Legos. You want a double tier couch? You can have a triple tier couch. You can have a quadruple tier couch. It's Legos. It's completely up to you. And we see that's all about seeing the imagination. But because Rex and Emmett were alive and he was underneath the dryer, that got me a little confused, because they tried to do that joke again where it was just like the two Legos clicking against each other to simulate fighting. It doesn't work when they're alive in the real world under a dryer. So it's like, it's bleeding too much. It's like they think there's music playing in the storage bin. I'm like, this is not working nearly as well. And again, Beatrice, to your point, it broke the rules, and it lost me a little bit. I was like, okay, because it felt like they were sort of backing off what I thought worked so well from the first movie.
Right. Okay. All right. So enough about, for now, because we are going to talk about the whole switch and the twist that actually wasn't a twist and everyone was telling the truth. We will talk about that, but the Lego world story does split into two. We have Lucy and the gang with going to the star system and meeting Queen whatever Wannabe, and then we have the story with Rex and Emmett. Now, for me, the best part of the movie was in that world with the star system and being like, are you evil? Are you not? And I like the play on the point of view and all that. That's great. And that's what I thought was the most fun. But what for me was the most kind of intellectually stimulating, I guess, is the whole Rex Emmett storyline, which even though I personally found to be quite boring, the more I thought about it, I was like, okay, well, they're talking about masculinity and what does this mean? And the intellectual part of me was like trying to like break that down. So let's talk about the fun part, which is why Wannabe is like the greatest character ever. So Alex, here's your moment. Tell me, why is Wannabe so great, and why is this part of the story so amazing?
Well, I just think that Tiffany Haddish is having a lot of fun with this voice work. Like she's adding a lot of flair to every line that she gives. I think that the whole playing of, hey, I'm totally not evil, you guys, and like using words that are very close to evil words. And the song itself, the song Not Evil is the pinnacle of her character, in my opinion. She goes like unconniving, unnasty, and like she goes through every person. I honestly think that song deserves an Oscar nomination when we get to next year. Like this is the song that deserves it of the movie. And also like later you get the whole idea of her like uniting her kingdoms together. Like she's the one who's doing it. She has to do it through these squirrely means, and like tricking Batman into getting to marry him, because it's a reflection of the sister, that the sister has to like, because the direct manner has failed, so now she has to go around the brother, in this case by stealing the toys. And Queen Whatever Wannabe is just following the same thing, as well as her henchman Mayhem. So like I love the connection between Whatever Wannabe's story and the sister's interpretation of what's going on in their brother-sister dynamic. And at the same time, I just think that she's funny whenever she's on screen. She also has the moment where she's like doing her evil laugh, and it turns out she's just laughing at a banana, but the animation like makes her look like a devil. So like you totally fall, and the music is classic evilness. So I think that just the twisting of her actually not being evil, but like doing things that a normal hammy villain in a movie would do. Like I think it meshes together perfectly, and it goes through all the way to the end. So I really enjoyed her character the most.
Gotcha. Anyone want to add anything else about Wannabe?
Yeah. I mean, I sort of went into it thinking it's like, okay, so she's obviously evil. They're trying to make a riff or a parody of that, and it's the fact that she wound up actually not being evil. I guess I'm a little embarrassed to say I was a little surprised by that, because I was actually expecting her to be evil, and they were taking a completely different direction. But yeah, what Alex said, Tiffany Haddish was, you could tell she was having just the time of her life recording those roles. And I love it when celebrity VAs do that in general, because it shows that they actually care. They liked the script enough to actually give their A game to something like this. And it's, especially when it's something like this, where it could just be the easiest thing in the world to just sort of phone it in, because you think you might be pandering to an audience that really could care less. So I really you got to give her a ton of credit for just how well she just acted the hell out of that role.
Right. April, did you at any point assume that Wannabe was evil?
Yes, of course I did, because I'm always suspicious. And then I gotta admit, I was a little bit upset that she wasn't actually evil. Like,
really? You wanted her to be full on evil?
Kind of, like, but it was actually it was surprising, like, again, because they set it up so much. And so I'm just like, oh, like, I was kind of waiting for that double psych out with her character, where they're like, oh, she's not evil, and then she's gonna be evil, or like, she's not gonna be evil, but then she is evil. Like, I was just kind of waiting for that, but it never came. And I'm glad that she was a good person, but I do agree that her that Tiffany Haddish did a great job in the role. Again, everyone's already said how much you can tell that she really enjoyed like playing the character. And I love that the color like scheme. I like that they kept the colors of her, and that I was like thinking about it, and I was like, can those Lego pieces actually make those shapes that she was? Because I want to go try and make all of those shapes. And then like there was other parts of me too that I was just like, why doesn't she just add more shapes to her? Like, just grow, girl, like get bigger. But it was great. And I loved like the whole, like her whole like kingdom too, like how everything's just like positive and poppy and fun and covered in glitter, because everyone loves glitter. So, but no, she was a great character, and her bridal party was amazing.
Speaking of the marriage, well, before that, I do want to say that I was very upset. Not that she wasn't evil, but the fact that I, for one second, thought that she was. Because she freaking brings out Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Like, I'm just like, there's no way the evil person is going to be celebrating Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So I was like very upset in hindsight.
I think that's the beauty of this storyline, because it's playing into our cynicism as a society, that we shouldn't be afraid of the unknown just because they communicate in a way that is off-putting to us dark-hearted people. Right. Like, we should be open to hearing them out, sort of thing. I like that kind of wholesome message about how cynicism is bad.
But and I think the other lesson as well is, if you're not evil, maybe don't introduce yourself by saying, "Hi, I'm not evil."
Yeah.
So my guess for that was that it was because, again, like, Bianca's the one playing her, so I feel like those are all words that she's heard, and she's like, well, if this character isn't nasty, then they're unnasty, and if they're not like conniving, then they're unconniving. And that was like my whole thought process behind like the choice of those words and just putting "un" in front of them, is because her vocabulary may not be as large enough to come up with more positive words.
Yeah. And also it fits into the whole, like, when Sweet Mayhem at the end was like, we tried to talk to you and you were like, you wouldn't, so we're talking in your language. So hello, I am not evil kind of fits with the whole, like, well, you think I am, so I need to tell you I am not. So I mean, it fit very well. They did that very well. Even though when I feel like when he was her age, we didn't have this issue as much with the world, but granted, he was playing with, like, in his father's world. I mean, see, this is why it all blurs together and it's confusing. But yeah, John, I think you were gonna say something.
No, I was just gonna, on the Ruth Bader Ginsburg thing. Is there actually like a Lego Supreme Court set out there? Because I would love to have all 9, like, have the bench and be like, and now the Lego Supreme Court will commence litigants and all that. Like, can I get the Lego Clarence Thomas or the Lego Justice Roberts too?
Like, I just need a Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Like, if there wasn't one before, there's definitely going to be one now. Like, I feel like that now people will demand it. But I kind of do also, I want to just mention how I really appreciate the whole sequence between her and Batman. I mean, are we going to ship Wannabe and Batman?
I think the movie did it for us.
I mean, are we for it? Because I really liked how she went out of her way to go like, no, we're not going to force him. We want to get his consent. And I was like, yes, thank you. Like, again, that should have been another tip, that she wasn't evil because she wanted him to. I mean, granted, was that a little bit manipulative where she was like, I'm going to poke your buttons and I know exactly the type of person you are, so I'm going to make you, she's convincing him that she's his perfect partner. But did any of you read that as somewhat manipulative?
Yeah, when I thought she was evil.
When you thought she was evil. Gotcha. Okay, well, I also, like, I did think that, but also I was like, oh, I like that she's getting his consent. That's nice. Even though it's like, well, if she's being manipulative, if she's manipulating him, is it really his consent? That's another discussion, though.
Yeah, this is like the prime example of negging somehow working. So
it's also like, we also know that Lego Batman has his, ticks and quirks too. So is it really like negging all that much when you realize, like, you could just sort of, exactly what he likes and you give him what he likes and he's like that easy to manipulate like that?
Well, I mean, I think it still counts as negging.
That's exactly what negging is.
Yeah, no matter how easy it is, how quick it works, I think it still is.
But at the end of the day, they're both compatible. They're both lonely people who have British servants, so I could work it out. Right?
Yeah, and they're not evil is the most important thing. I will say the one part of this kind of this storyline that didn't necessarily work for me was the brainwashing sequence. Even though I liked myself, I was like, ooh, it's a spa day. That's great. I was just kind of like, okay, so this song, the one that's going to get in our head, did it actually get in your head?
Yes.
No.
I tweeted, like, after leaving the movie, I was like, is it wrong that 5 minutes after the catchiest song that will get in your head, I already forgot how the song goes? Like, so like, this movie is full of songs that are good, but I think that hurts the catchy song because the catchy song ends up being like 4th place or so.
even though also I feel like the movie relied way too much on Everything Is Awesome. Like at one point I was like, you have to let it go. At one point I was like, like I don't need a reprise of it. I got like the funny joke in the beginning where like everything is not awesome. I get it. And I know the stinger at the end, I understand, but also if there are so many better songs in this movie, like, Wannabe song, like I would have preferred a reprise of that, to be honest, which would give me an excuse to get more of Wannabe.
That she got 2 songs was very great. It's like the Gotham City guys that I don't really think we've touched upon, but it is a good song still. And a catchy song. I don't know, because that's not even an Everything Is Awesome ripoff. Like that's its own original thing, but it's just not as good. Like I think Everything Is Not Awesome when they sing in the bin. Like I actually kind of like that song because of the extra additions of like, hey, like have realistic expectations. It's like kind of calling out the original Everything Is Awesome song. Well, like adapting it to our cynical 2018, like, hey, everything. It's kind of the thesis of the movie, right? It's like, hey, everything is not awesome. Like there are things that suck, but that doesn't mean you should stop trying to make things better in small ways. So I think there are strong messages throughout this movie, and Everything Is Not Awesome. While it is an update of a song that maybe has worn out its welcome, but I think that it's done well.
Gotcha. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay, well, did anyone like completely like reject my thought of the brainwash sequence not being that great?
I think it's fair. Because I mean, I thought it was okay. Like it was good for laughs. It was fun to see, everyone was getting all sparkly, and it was really funny that they got Noel Fielding as a vampire, because I really like Noel Fielding as an actor already. And
it's basically his IT Crowd character.
I think it's just him. He looks like a vampire in real life too. But yeah, I thought I didn't think too much of it. It sort of played for laughs. There was some nice bits. It was you could tell obviously something was up, just at how annoyingly clean everything was. So, but I don't know. For me, it just wasn't one of the more memorable moments of the movie.
Gotcha. Okay, well, I guess it's time to talk about Rex. We need to talk about Rex.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I like how they were, because that was the first thing I thought was like, is this like a Fight Club thing? Like, are they doing a Fight Club thing? Was the first thing. And I like how Emmett was like constantly needs to ask, do you see him too? Like, is this all in my head? I really appreciate that. But I mean, I do want to get into this kind of dealing with masculinity thing that they're doing. I mean, obviously Rex is a play on Chris Pratt. Mm-hmm. It's like a mix of all his characters. I just think part of me is like, okay, well, Rex is helping Emmett deal with emotions, which is like not toxic masculinity. It's telling you it's okay to feel and it's okay to be angry. But then I started thinking more about it and I was like, no, it's still toxic masculinity because he's telling him to deal with his emotions in a violent way where it's destroying things. So it's still toxic masculinity. So then I don't know. I was just, even though I found this storyline to not be as exciting because, I mean, it's basically Chris Pratt talking to himself, I still thought it had a lot of messages there. And I mean, it's true. Like this whole play on like, okay, like Emmett shouldn't have to change despite the world changing for him, around him. And I really, really, really like the fact that Emmett at one point becomes the villain. He at one point is the cause of the mom apocalypse, I think or Momageddon. Momageddon? I don't know the word.
Our Momageddon.
Our Momageddon. Yes. So what did you guys think of this whole kind of storyline of this kind of dynamic that Emmett and Rex have? Am I just reading too much into it? Is this not about toxic masculinity?
Well, definitely not at all. You're not reading too much into it. I think that's what they're trying to go for. I personally interpret it as a little bit superficial, honestly. Like they're reflecting Chris Pratt's characters as seen in like Jurassic World and etc. That he's playing like the macho guy who has to save the lady, sort of thing. And they're like calling out that there is darkness under those that kind of motivation for a character. But at the same time, like the movie ends with Emmett fighting him in like a punching fight. So I don't get the feeling that it ever really like brings it all the way home in terms of its message, other than just saying, "Hey guys, hiding your emotions is bad." Like I don't think it gets any deeper than that. The overall message is important that like, hey, darkness is not does not mean you're manly. And like the Lego Batman movie also dealt with this pretty much throughout its entire runtime too. Like, hey, just because Batman's dark doesn't mean he's not still an a-hole. But like just like I don't know. It's a message that I feel like a lot of movies are dealing with now, but at the same time, I don't think many of these movies are getting deep enough into exactly why they're troublesome. Like this also reminds me very much of Wreck-It Ralph 2, which is similarly skirting around the lines of like, hey, the idea of macho being you need to destroy and save everyone. Like that's not what it all boils down to. Like the message is there, but at the same time it feels like it's surrounded by other stuff, so it kind of gets drowned out with the rest of the story. So I definitely think it's there, but I do think it's of the various messages that this movie is trying to portray, to give off, I think that it's one of the weaker executions.
Gotcha. I will say Wreck-It Ralph I think did it better. Wreck-It Ralph 2 did it better. But yes, I agree with you. John, what do you think?
It's funny you brought up Fight Club, because the first thing I thought of once Rex was revealed to be Emmett in the future, I was like, this is Fight Club. So, and Fight Club does deal with toxic masculinity because it's about people who leave their awful, sad lives and go beat each other up. So, but this was, I thought this was okay? Question mark. Like, I do get how they played. It's like he gets left under the dryer. No one comes for him. Then goes to seek his revenge, but then he travels back in time by taking bits from every single time machine in popular culture and merging it all into one, which I still don't know why he did that. He could have just taken any one of them and never mind. But yeah, to what Alex said, it did feel a little superficial. I feel like this is something we've seen 19 times before in multiple different ways in Wreck-It Ralph 2. Some other shows have done this in the past. Some movies have done this in the past too. It didn't add anything particularly new to the table. It still was a good twist that Rex was Emmett from the future and he was bringing about Armageddon as a sort of revenge. And I did think when he dissolved at the end because his timeline was erased, it was pretty interesting too. Like, and I love the animation on that where like bits and pieces of him are like just going all at once rather than like the slow dissolve. But as far as the message goes, it's something that it's an okay message. It's not something that's like going to be earth-shattering, groundbreaking, or adds anything particularly new. It was done all right. Just, Gotcha.
April, what about you?
I sort of took Rex's character, while he did like, I guess, display a lot of signs of like, the overabundance of masculinity or even slightly toxic masculinity, especially with the whole like, oh, just like punch your way out of it or whatever. I kind of took Rex as more of like that symbol of change that potentially like Finn has been trying to avoid, especially in his home life. Like, and that's something that they sort of like introduced from the very beginning because they have, the invasion of the Duplo characters, which of course are his sister's toys. And then it's just kind of like him processing like the fact that like, okay, like your sister plays with these toys too. Your mom's really encouraging because again, the mom does state like, like I've said this, multiple times to you guys, like you guys have to play nice together. And so I sort of took like Rex's character as that, especially because it fits in with like the whole wild style thing. And she's like upset because Emmett hasn't changed and she wants him to be more like it's I guess like that the whole situation with Wild Style is what I guess brings about like the over masculinity of Rex versus Emmett, and that Emmett's like, oh well, like I have to be more like Rex. And I don't know if he necessarily meant it, if it was meant to be like, oh, I have to be more manly and I have to be more violent. And I don't think that that's what like Wild Style was kind of getting at, especially since Rex's character helps Emmett deal with his emotions. I think that if it had been just more like, you just have to be more manly, like that would have been very like in our face with it. And I guess like there is that element of like, oh, well, I deal with my emotions by punching my way through it. And then we see like the negative consequences of that. So I don't know, like I wouldn't say that he's necessarily the whole like toxic masculinity and the fight thing, of course, like happened, but it's fine.
Happened, sigh.
What happened.
So, I mean, and I feel like it's one of those things too, where like maybe that's supposed to be like the representation of his inner struggle, and where like, yeah, maybe Emmett's character, who is like a younger, like everything is awesome kind of person, and in that side of Finn is just sort of battling it out with his broody teenager years. That's like, you can't play with your sister. She's a girl and she's younger than you, and that's not okay. And like that kind of situation. So I feel like maybe like that fight between them was like just him inside of himself being like, you can play with your sister. It's okay. Like this is 2019 or something like that.
Right.
So,
Gotcha.
Although to add to that, that does mean then we had the hammy villain that wasn't the villain. We had the hammy hero that wasn't the hero. So just realized that is actually kind of funny in retrospect.
Yeah, that's the foil. That's the foil. But no, I think for me, the big thing with Rex, I think is I guess I wished he had interacted more with the other characters. I feel like because the stories were so segmented and it was Emmett versus Rex, or just Emmett and Rex just interacting. Had we seen more of him interacting with Wanabe, with Lucy, with Benny, with everybody, I can't get over the fact that he didn't interact with Bruce Willis as much. You know what I mean? Like Bruce, like there is so much written about what's it called? About Bruce Willis in what's that movie?
Die Hard?
That movie, Die Hard. There's so much about the whole masculinity thing in Die Hard. Like there are theses written about masculinity in Die Hard. If you're going to bring in Bruce Willis in his version of Die Hard, you need to have your question or your kind of engagement with this discourse to engage with him too. I don't know. I feel like they could have done more with this, and I don't think they did enough with it. And maybe this is why I felt it was so scattered, because I thought the film itself with its themes felt a little bit scattered, is because they feel like been more focused on one of these things or incorporated or focused on one theme, because I didn't really realize until the end. I was like, oh yeah, Lucy was the one who wanted Emmett to change. I forgot about that by the end.
Yeah.
So I thought had they incorporated more of that and involved the other characters who had been pressuring Emmett to change and seen the damage that does, maybe then this could have been a little bit more layered. It could have had a little bit more substance. But we didn't get that. But it's fine. I just thought, maybe that's what was missing. It was as superficial as Emmett's stubble. So
it was a marker, but even Rex's was marker. So.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's exactly it. Rex's was marker. It was all a facade. It was all an illusion of sorts.
He got to watch The Matrix for the first time, and he was like, wow, I'm mature now. Yeah.
Yeah. We all remember the first time watching The Matrix.
Confession, I still haven't watched it.
Oh, no. That's another discussion.
No, that means she's pure like Emmett. So
there you go. I'd rather be pure like Emmett. I don't want to be Rex. I never want to be Rex.
Accept you in your pureness like Emmett.
Thank you. See, why can't I find a Lucy who'll accept me, Anyway, that's another discussion, you guys. So what were your favorite cameos of the movie? Like, what were your favorite, like, side characters that you were just like, this is great?
My favorite cameo was the lack of cameo by Marvel, and I love that they pointed it out, too. They're like, we keep bringing Marvel, and they won't answer.
I kind of like how they just like were like, oh, the Justice League, they like handled them. They're like, they're just gonna be gone. They'll be back for a bit, but for the most part, they're gone. And I love how it's just like there were just steadily more and more Wonder Women.
Yeah,
just like one. That was great.
I also did really enjoy Bruce Willis in the vents. Like,
yeah, he was great.
He only lives in the vents.
He only lives. He's comfy there. He's comfortable.
I had said Noel Fielding already, but for me, my other favorite cameo was Jason Momoa as Aquaman, just because.
Oh yes.
Just because I get it. Just because I the one thing I liked about this movie is just how much like how they actually made the effort to go out and get the actual actors for a lot of these guys, and just seeing Jason Momoa in Lego form is like, oh my god, this is great. So.
Gotcha. Alex, what about you? What's your favorite cameo?
I don't know if I have a favorite cameo. Like, honestly, I think that one demerit to this movie is that the cameos feel a lot more forced than they felt in other movies. Like, the one that stands out to me is when Emmett is is trying to rally his town to go to the alien world, and like Cheryl Swoops and Gary Payton randomly shows up, and Gary Payton has to say, "Yeah, that's right, WNBA legend Cheryl Swoops." Like, it's like what is even who is this for? It's like so a lot of the cameos felt like that in this movie, so I don't think I can praise like any of like the 5-second characters here.
I have to admit, on that Gary Payton note, I actually left the movie theater remembering that cameo. I was like, I only know one other person that would probably recognize that's Gary Payton, and that's Alex.
I didn't recognize who that was.
I didn't. That one flew past me, but I was like, someone will enjoy
Way
this.
over. But
yeah.
I was gonna say I really enjoyed Channing Tatum as Superman and Jonah Hill as Green Lantern.
I love the continuation of that. That's great. That was wonderful. I will remain with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I will RBG, man. That is my favorite cameo. And I mean, but hey, maybe the person who could recognize whoever it was you were talking about, Alex, couldn't recognize Ruth Bader Ginsburg. You know, like it's like different strokes for different folks. You know,
I feel like Ruth Bader Ginsburg is way more of a national icon.
Oh, yeah. I agree with you, but there may be that one person who doesn't know, but is like really into WWE or something. I don't know.
Sadly, I think just because I'm so so disillusioned with the American educational system, there probably are more people that recognize Gary Payton than Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
That's a very sad thing to think about. But yeah, so that I think RBG has to be my favorite cameo. But yeah, I think that does it for us. Is there any kind of last thoughts you guys have on the movie? This is the time to speak of them.
This podcast is going to get stuck inside your head. No.
I think one thing we need to talk about, what did everyone think about Maya Rudolph as the mom?
She was great.
I love her, yeah. I think I kind of thought it was really funny that like Will Ferrell was just like, I'm not doing this sequel. And just kind of
did voices and that was it.
Like just that one thing. It's like, do the thing your mom told you to do.
Which we all know he could have. He just did all that in the recording booth when he was like, I'm not, because his character in Legos did appear. So I was like, okay, so they got him back for that, and then he was like, I'm not going to be in person for this. And then they're like, okay, well then just record these lines and then we'll put it in.
Rudolph's line of very close to childbirth got really loud laughs in my theater.
Yeah,
I did as well.
Yep.
We've all stepped on Legos before, and it does really, really hurt.
Yeah, that is painful.
I will say I really enjoyed the ending credits song.
Yes.
With like the Lonely Island and I think it was like Beck and one other person who I can't remember, but I really, really enjoyed that. And I love that the song is just like about how cool it is to have the ending credits song, and then they like read off the credits.
The credits are great because everyone gets their due for participating in an hour-long piece of art. Shout out to stereoscopic supervisor Chris Cunnington. I'm sure he is so pumped when he got mentioned in the song.
And then they got to the voice actors, and then the joke was like they do 4 whole hours of work and they get paid millions.
Yeah.
That is probably the best ending credit sequence I've ever seen.
I think
it's the combination of the visuals of like seeing the Legos like go over in like a circular motion along with the song. Like the combination is just perfect.
Yeah.
I think for me, the only thing that rivals it would be like the opening credits of Deadpool.
Oh yeah.
I think that to me is, for me, it's a little fun. I enjoyed that a little bit more, but it's still in that same vein of humor.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right. Well, you can find out all the info on this podcast at overlyanimated.com. You can join us on Discord to text chat about animation at overlyanimated.com/Discord and tell us why we are correct or wrong about our opinions of this movie. You can support us via Patreon at patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thanks to all our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Rachel, aka Rachel Rose. And thanks as always to our Patreon executive producers, John, Ryan, Steve, Alex, and Hugh. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Yes.
Take care.
Queen whatever is a queen.